Lower Decks. Because Sub Rosa was so awful, the producers decide to focus on an entirely different group of characters.
Riker and Troi are discussing crew evaluations in 10 Forward in a very jocular and offhand way.
Jocular. How long you been waiting to pull that one out? They were discussing it next to some game that I really wanted to see in action, and then my wish was granted when we cut over to a group of junior officers playing that game, wondering what Riker and Troi could be talking about.
The group consists of human Lavelle, Bajoran Sito, Vulcan Torek, and Nurse Ogawa, who are all hoping for promotions with varying levels of desperation. Lavelle is played by Dan Gauthier, I don't know, who was in a movie called Excessive Force 2, Force on Force. A movie that I've never heard of, but based on that title, I definitely want to check it out.
Sito is actually from the episode The First Duty, where Wesley killed that kid. And it was interesting to see her in the show again as the same character.
Yeah, and after so long, I was very happy about that. And Torek is played by some guy who was in Time's Arrow, but not playing the same character.
One of the servers in 10 Forward named Ben,
who is wearing a very stylish outfit,
overhears Riker and Troi discussing who to promote. And it turns out there's an ops position available that Lavelle and Sito are both up for.
Later, the promotion candidates are participating in a simulated combat exercise. After which, Riker chastises both Sito and Lavelle for their performance, but not equally. He half flirts with Sito and completely embarrasses Lavelle, making him look like a total idiot in front of everyone.
But, as we'll see, he kind of is an idiot.
That doesn't justify it.
That's how I treat all my subordinates at work.
Picard comes onto the bridge to tell them that they are changing course, ordering Lavelle to go to maximum warp. So does he mean warp 5 or warp 9.895 or whatever?
Yeah, they're really trampling all over the ghost of whatever her name was. And interestingly, instead of following the senior officers to their meeting, we stick with Sito and Lavelle on the bridge as they discuss how the drill went.
And noting that they are heading close to the Cardassian border. In engineering, Torek shows Geordi a new warp field configuration that he's been simulating.
Geordi is annoyed that Torek is showing him up, and Torek keeps pushing and says he wants to start tests on the Enterprise.
But Geordi vetoes it because he wasn't the one who came up with the idea. Because there might be variables that they didn't consider.
Yeah, like who came up with the idea?
And Geordi doesn't even try to hide his annoyance, as he says he'll get back to him later.
In sickbay, Beverly tells Ogawa she's being recommended for a promotion, and the conversation shifts to Ogawa's relationship with a Lieutenant Powell. And Ogawa is worried that a canceled date means that their relationship is over.
In 10 Forward, Sito talks to Worf and learns that he recommended her for a promotion.
While at another table, Lavelle is speculating what the two of them are talking about when Riker walks in.
Ben addresses Riker by his first name, which throws Lavelle off, and the others say that he wouldn't think Riker disliked him so much if he got to know him, so he goes over to do so.
And he's really awkward, doesn't know how to talk to people, and it was weird.
And he tries to bring up the fact that his grandfather and Riker were both Canadian, but it turns out that Riker isn't Canadian, he's from Alaska.
Same difference. Which is basically what Lavelle says.
Yeah. And out of context, the whole scene makes it look like Lavelle is trying to hit on Riker, which was funny. He's like, "You come here often, Commander?"
"Let me buy you a drink."
"The drinks are free, Lavelle."
"So am I, after my shift." The ship reaches a Cardassian border, and Worf detects an escape pod right inside, and Picard wonders how they're going to get it out, and tells Geordi to boost the bioflavonoids or whatever so the transporter can reach it.
In engineering, Torek tries to identify the humanoid beings in the pod, but Geordi stops him, saying he wasn't told to do that, and they just focus on improving the transporter beam. In sickbay, Beverly and Ogawa are getting things ready, and Beverly suddenly tells her to get out, that she doesn't have the clearance for what's going to happen in there. When Ogawa goes into the hall, she and Sito discuss all the secrecy, and when Picard comes by, he gives Sito a weird look.
And then as he leaves, he tells Sito to come with him, and asks her if she's a certified pilot.
He asks her if she is in fact suited for the position that she's up for, and expresses skepticism because of how she tried to cover up the other kid's death in the first duty, saying she should have been expelled, which is true.
She counters with, "It would have been easier to walk away after the first duty, since she was ostracized by everyone. But she stuck with it, which should count for something, and Picard says, "Get the f*** out of my office."
Geordi has a confused Torek fire a phaser rifle at a shuttlecraft, saying it's a normal test of hull resiliency. And Torek offers to reduce the intensity of the phaser, saying it wouldn't affect the test, which doesn't make any sense. But Geordi tells him to just follow orders, Ensign.
Torek still manages to deduce that they're making it appear that the shuttle had fled an attack. And Geordi, again, being annoyed that people are running in circles around him, just tells him to shut up again.
Beverly tells Ogawa that she's going to be working on a patient that she can't tell anyone about, and it turns out to be a Cardassian. And we haven't seen them in the show in a while. The junior officers discuss what is going on while playing poker, where Sito is too dejected to say much, and Ben mentions a rumor that Spock was the one in the escape pod.
They talk about being so close to the Cardassian border, Cedo stressing down, Lavelle trying to suck up, and Torek showing Geordi up with all of his new calculations.
And all the while, Ogawa tries not to reveal what she really knows.
Meanwhile, the senior officers are also playing poker, and they're discussing Ogawa's relationship, Sito not being a good fit for the promotion, and Lavelle sucking up in his similarities to Riker.
And eventually, Cedo and Geordi leave their respective games. Torek wonders if he's ruined his relationship with Geordi when he suddenly walks in, asking for his assistance in running tests on the new warp setup.
And Ben goes to play poker with the senior officers, because they're all such good friends. And Ben is a long-standing character on the show.
And now he's up for a promotion to head mixologist.
The next day, at Worf's space karate class, he tells Sito that she's ready for the advanced class, but needs to pass a very ancient Klingon ritual, as opposed to, a regular ancient ritual. I'm not sure what makes it very ancient.
He blindfolds her and tells her to defend herself while he attacks. And she keeps getting knocked down and eventually takes the blindfold off, saying she won't continue because it isn't fair.
Which Worf reveals was the real test. Oh, man.
But perhaps next time you are judged unfairly, it will not take so many bruises for you to protest.
Sito goes to Picard and protests his prior assessment of her, saying he should judge her for who she is now and not what she did in the past, even if it involved getting someone killed.
And Picard reveals that his dressing down was actually to assess her for a secret mission and to report to her meeting with the senior officers. So, if I were Cedo, I'd be questioning everything everyone was doing to me at this point.
And I don't know if I would want to be involved in a secret mission that's being run by these people. And Picard tells her that he requested her on the Enterprise so that she would have a chance to redeem herself. Beverly talks to Ogawa about how she not only feels that she deserves a promotion, but she thinks of her as a friend, all the while treating the conversation as one with a subordinate, even slightly rising up on her toes to appear taller.
She's got all the tricks up her sleeve, man. Should take some notes.
Ogawa tells her that Powell asked her to marry him, and Beverly doesn't mention the other woman that she saw him with. What good friends.
We then cut back to the important part of the episode, where Sito enters the meeting with the senior officers to find them sitting with the Cardassian who was in the escape pod and later saved by Beverly. He is actually a Federation agent and needs to get back into Cardassian territory.
They say they'll use the shuttle that they doctored up to look like it had been in a battle, and if he goes back with a captured Bajoran terrorist, everything will look more convincing.
And once they make it inside the Cardassian border, he'll launch Cedo out in an escape pod.
Picard says he will not order Sito to participate, but she volunteers anyway.
Picard tells Sito to report to sickbay, to get beat up, and it's just makeup and stuff, but I wish we had a shot where Sito got to sickbay, the door opened, and Beverly glances up and smiles as she's tying her boxing gloves on, and the door closes after Sito walks in.
Later, Sito shows Worf how Beverly made it look like she'd been beaten up,
and tells Worf she appreciates that he always had confidence in her and that she'll be back soon.
As the shuttle heads for the border, Sito asks the Cardassian why he's helping Starfleet, and he says being in the Cardassian military used to mean working for the security of Cardassia, but now it's nothing but pointless wars as Cardassian officers try to advance their own positions. And they each express surprise at a Cardassian and a Bajoran working together. The whole scene felt like it belonged more in an episode of Deep Space Nine than TNG.
They're spotted by a patrol ship, so they begin their ruse of her being a captured terrorist.
And not just a casual murderer who tried to cover it up, and later made excuses about it. The gang discusses things in 10 Forward, where Lavelle concludes that Sito must have been on the shuttle, and he's upset when Ogawa and Torek say they aren't at liberty to tell him what they know.
Later, the ship reaches the escape pod's rendezvous point, but they've been waiting for hours. They launch a probe into Cardassian space, and data detects debris from a destroyed escape pod.
Later, Picard makes a log saying they intercepted a Cardassian message confirming that a Bajoran prisoner was killed while trying to flee in an escape pod. And he makes a ship-wide announcement about her death, just like he's done with every crew member that has ever died on the show.
We close in 10 forward, where Lavelle reveals he got promoted, and he feels guilty, but Torek says the best way to remember Sito would be to excel in his new position.
Ben tries to get Worf to sit with the others, saying they were all friends of Sito, and at first Worf considers breaking his neck, saying he was just her commanding officer, but Ben tells him that Sito considered Worf a friend as well, so he goes to sit with them.
Lower decks. Overall?
What a pleasant surprise. Based on how Season 7 has gone so far, I would not have expected that we would get such a good episode at this point, especially right after Sub Rosa.
Yeah, why don't you just copy and paste all of my notes?
I love the idea of looking at the main crew from a subordinate perspective. I feel like we've brought up that idea multiple times, pointing out how questionable a lot of their actions and behaviors must seem to the people that aren't senior officers. I liked the characters that they utilized for that, but I was surprised that Nurse Ogawa was one of them, given that she's been in so many episodes, and she did seem to have a closer relationship to Beverly before this. And it makes me wonder if the subplot about Ogawa's boyfriend supposedly seeing someone else is going to come up again, but I doubt it. I did expect a lot more humor to come out of this idea, but I didn't mind where things went. Sito's death was handled in a much better way than I would have expected, and I couldn't help comparing it to Tasha Yar's death and how much better they handled this one. And even the fact that we don't see it but only hear about it secondhand fits with the limited information that the ensigns had throughout the episode. I really liked the cutting back and forth in the poker scene and the discussions they had, even if they sometimes didn't feel completely organic. It felt like they kind of tried a little too hard to kind of match things up there, but it was good. I do wish we had gotten a bit more about the ensigns' opinions of the main cast. That would have been an easy opportunity to add in some more humor, and maybe even to reference events of earlier episodes, and it also would have served to make it feel more like these characters have always been there in the background instead of mostly just popping up in this episode. I did really like that they brought back Cedo from the first duty. I'm still really surprised that they did that, and I hope we'll see Lavelle and Torek again. Lavelle did get promoted, but I suspect that won't happen, which is a real shame. The idea of following characters that are not the top-ranking ones appeals to me a lot, not just in the context of this show, but in general. I always prefer when you follow kind of like a normal person instead of the most important person. And I know there's an animated Star Trek show with that premise, but I saw the trailer for it, and it looked so terrible that I don't know if I'm ever actually going to watch it, but at least I got this one episode.
Is it serious or is it comedic, that show?
It looks like freaking like the worst episodes of Family Guy, but like Star Trek. It looks terrible. I was torn between a B plus and an A-, but I went ahead with an A-.
I gave it an A- as well. I can't believe this episode came right after the monstrosity that was Sub Rosa. I liked how much we jumped around to different parts of the ship, with all the different people, doing all the different stuff. It gave the show a much more realistic feel as to what goes on day to day on the ship, which the show has struggled with since the beginning, portraying the passage of time and what happens during that time. It's too bad we haven't got more of that, and I do not anticipate we'll get more of it in the future. The junior officer's acting felt a lot like 90s young people TV show acting, which was a bit overdone, and with everybody smiling way too much about everything.
I don't know if I agree with the smiling, but I could see that with the acting in general.
They're always smiling so huge about little amusing things, and it always ended the scene. It's like, what would happen in that conversation if the camera didn't cut away? They would all just be awkwardly grinning at each other like freaking Fright Night.
I guess I see what you mean.
Once the seriousness of the Cardassian plot had formed, it seemed odd that the only lighter subject that was still floating around was Ogawa's relationship with Powell. Earlier in the episode, it made much more sense, but it really should have faded with the rest of the lighter material. I thought it was weird that they kept sticking it in.
I did feel like Ogawa was a little bit out of place, even in terms of just how she fit into the episode.
I liked the last conversation between Sito and the Cardassian about why he was doing what he was doing. I know Deep Space Nine was happening at this time, but even so, it gave the events of this episode a little more purpose, though I wish there had been more time dedicated to it instead of just that mini conversation. If I were on the ship as a junior officer, I would have been concerned about Lavelle's promotion, since he spent the whole episode being kind of an idiot, and advocated that his buddies reveal all of their secrets just because they were buddies, and didn't place any weight on his or their official duties or responsibilities. What a great officer he's going to be. But overall, I thought this was a new and interesting idea that was executed in a good way.
So I can't wait to get back to these characters next episode.
Maybe Ronan will show up, having survived somehow. If Moriarty's universe exists, then doesn't the candle holder exist in that universe?
No.
Yes, it does. Because he's got the whole universe. And he's coming back in Picard, I saw in some trailer, which means he could bring the candle holder from his universe.
I think you're giving the writers ideas that are probably better than the ones they came up with for Picard.
We'll see when we finally get to that show.
I can't wait.